Good morning. We'll call the meeting to order.
Being recorded.
Council is conducting this meeting in person and via conference call in accordance with the Municipal Government Act, Section 199. Council chambers is now open for public attendance in person. However, councillors and members of the public may still join meetings remotely using our current teleconference process. If you have submitted a comment request, the chair will call on you at the appropriate time. The chair may also ask for comments and concerns from the public relating to a particular topic, and at this time, phone lines will be unmuted. If you would like to speak, please state your name. We ask that only one member of the public speak at a time. All persons will be allotted 10 minutes to speak as per our procedural bylaw. We ask that if the meeting recesses, that any callers hang up and call back in as the meeting reconvenes. This helps with call quality. Please note this call is being recorded and will be uploaded to our website and/or social media. To eliminate background noise, please mute your phone during the meeting. Everyone has a right to be present at council meetings and council committee meetings. Any attendees that are considered disruptive to the progression of the meeting may be removed at the discretion of the chair as per the Municipal Government Act, Section 198. We thank you for your cooperation and understanding. We have an agenda before us. Does anybody have any additions or changes?
Good morning, Maria Link. Brian from administration. We do have some agenda additions that we'd like to propose to council. The first agenda item addition would be an appointment. It's a hydrogen overview at 11. It's by Marcus Lehman. The second one would be a joint meeting request from the town of Strathmore. And that one we could add under 2.2.2. Third item would be a peace officer bylaw, and that would be under 2.1.5. We'd also have village funding, a new CRISP program, and that would be an in-camera item under FOIP Section 21. So that would be under agenda item 4. There was a request put forward by the Strathmore FCSS for attendance at a community conversation on housing. That would be a good item to put under 2.2.6. And then just an agenda change, we're hoping to move just the continuation of the Budget Committee of the Whole from 2.2.1 to after the in-camera session. That is all I have, thank you.
Sorry, the last one was, capital budget 2.21, move that after closed session.
Yes, okay. Yes.
Perfect. Any other additions or changes? A motion to approve the agenda is amended.
Also move.
Councillor Biggar has moved. All in favor? Motion is carried. With the minutes in the package for our organizational meeting November 1st, 2021. Any errors or omissions?
I just have a question. When I was reading it, so we have two motions on the Wheatland Housing Board. Should one be rescinded?
Yes. Hold up my procedure bylaw for that and then lost the spot. Yes.
So does it do
had I thought to do it during the meeting, we could have reconsidered the original motion, but I neglected to do that. So yes, we shouldn't have two contradicting motions.
So does it have to be in an organizational meeting, or can it be in a council meeting that we can do that?
No.
So to me, there was a minor procedural error. So kind of what should have occurred was that there should have been a motion to reconsider the motion. So I did take a look at the procedural bylaw as well. So that is under, just pull it up, 9.10. So kind of all the steps were followed with the exception of an actual motion to reconsider. However, the motion to reconsider was kind of lumped in with the other motion of the appointment of the housing board. So realistically, what council could do is just remove the resolution org 2021-1140. So that would be an option.
We need a motion to do that?
A motion to rescind the first motion, like under 911 of the procedure bylaw. Because it says that is used to cancel a previous action. A motion to rescind a previous motion, if passed by a majority vote of the councillors present, renders the previous motion referred to be null and void. A motion to rescind is debatable, and to the merits of the question, it is proposed to rescind. If a motion to rescind relates to an action taken at a previous meeting and the matter does not appear on the agenda, a notice of motion shall precede the motion to rescind. A motion to rescind shall not undo actions which have already been taken as a result of the motion previously passed. To the question of being in an organizational meeting, I believe we can do committee appointments in a regular council meeting. Sorry, go ahead, please.
Reeve Lincoln Council. I believe you could also approve the organizational meetings with the amendment to remove the one motion, just due to oversight.
Do you want me to do that? I'll move that we approve the organizational minutes, removing with a small amendment of moving resolution 2021-1140 due to oversight.
Questions or debate? All in favor? Motion is carried. We had the minutes in the package for our November 1st, 2021 regular council meeting. Any errors or omissions? Sorry.
I'll move the minutes as written.
Excellent. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.11. I move that the process for the Wheatland County Council meeting as it pertains to the scheduled public hearings will be as follows. Public hearing, first reading if required, then consideration for further readings of bylaw for those public hearings that have been closed. I further move that the above process will take place with the absence of resolutions to go into and out of council before and after each public hearing. All in favor? Motion is carried. I'll call the public hearing to order for bylaw 2021-15. Welcome, everybody. Does any member of the public have an objection to any councillor sitting on council for the public hearing? And can administration please verify that notice of the public hearing was circulated in accordance with the Municipal Government Act? Government Act.
To the chair, yes, it has.
And were there any written submissions?
No, there were not.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning, Council. Stefan from Administration presenting the public hearing, second and third reading for bylaw 2021-15. This item considers the redesignation of a portion of the subject lands from agricultural general district to country residential. Subject lands are located approximately 1 mile north of Highway 1, and they are on the east side of Range Road 264. So you'll recall this from earlier in the month. What the application is proposing is to redesignate a portion of the subject lands to country residential district in order to expand the boundaries of an existing country residential district lot. So lot 1 here is located in the northeast corner of the quarter section. It's proposed to be expanded, doubling in size to 4 acres. So that would accommodate the country residential area there. So that lot 1 is developed. It has a dwelling and associated servicing infrastructure on site. The portion that's proposed to be within lot 1 after the boundary adjustment is used for storage and shelter built, that type of thing. So the removal of actually cultivated agricultural land is minimal. The remainder lands do not have a dwelling or any associated infrastructure on site, and both of the parcels are proposed to access Range Road 264. So in terms of the policy, obviously they're not creating a new parcel, and the removal of agricultural land is minimal. So as such, there's no concerns in terms of that. So administration is recommending approval in accordance with the options provided in the report. That concludes my presentation, and happy to take questions. Thank you.
Any questions? Would the applicant like to speak? Any persons in support of the application? Any persons with concerns or opposed to the application who would like to speak? Any final comments from administration?
Through the chair, no thank you.
Thank you. I will close the public hearing for bylaw 2021-15. Council's wishes.
I'll move second reading of bylaw 2021-15.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
I'll move third reading for bylaw 2021-15.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.12, bylaw 2021-29.
Right, thank you, Council. So Stephen Kuntz again presenting first reading for 2021-29. The application proposes to redesignate the entire subject lands from Industrial General District to Intensive Industrial District. The lands are located, it's a bit tough to see on this map, but they're right where the mouse is there. It's approximately 2.25 miles east of Highway 24 and on the south side of Township Road 222. The applicant is proposing to redesignate, again, the entire subject lands from industrial general to intensive industrial in order to allow for the development of an automotive salvage yard. This is proposed to take place within one of the existing on-site buildings, as well as an outdoor storage area located on-site. So just before I get into the details, just as a way of FYI, development of this began in the summer of 2021 prior to this development, or this redesignation item, or the issuance of any development permit. So as such, this is subject to a stop order. But in terms of the site conditions and operational details, as you can see from the air photo, the site is developed with a number of buildings and storage areas. Not really any concerns with those. The only item really of consideration is the existing dwelling on site. The Industrial General District allows for that, but Intensive Industrial does not list dwelling as a use. So it would be allowed to remain as a non-conforming use. However, it couldn't be added to, or if it's significantly damaged, it wouldn't be able to be replaced if it was in the Intensive Industrial District. So access to the site is available via an existing approach to the north to Township Road 222. The applicant provided a conceptual traffic impact assessment which indicated theoretically traffic volumes generated by the development can be accommodated. A full TIA could be required, however, if approved at the development permit stage. So servicing to the site is provided via a private sewage treatment system and water well. However, these are for the dwelling. They're not appropriate for the proposed salvage yard, as a commercial license is not available for those. The applicant has proposed to haul water and wastewater to and from the site. They didn't provide any details regarding the location of the cistern or holding tanks, or how exactly that would work. Stormwater, you can see in the bottom southeast corner, there's a small stormwater pond there. As there's no new structures being proposed, it's likely appropriate. However, that could be confirmed at development permit stage. And also the outdoor storage area may have some concerns for their overland flow going through that area if there's any contaminants. But again, that could be explored during the development permit stage, but again, no details were provided at this time. So in terms of the policy, essentially what kind of boils down to is both the land use bylaw and the Goldfinch Industrial Area Structure Plan both kind of break it into heavy industrial and light industrial. So the intensive industrial, which is what they're proposing to go to, that's the purple area here in the Goldfinch Area Structure Plan. And the blue area is the light industrial or the industrial general. So industrial general is defined in the land use bylaw as to provide for light or medium industrial development that has a minimal to no impact on adjacent landowners in terms of a nuisance effect. So salvage yard isn't listed as a use in industrial general, hence the proposal to redesignate to intensive industrial. So intensive industrial does allow salvage yard. The intent of that district is to accommodate medium to heavy industrial development that creates a moderate to significant nuisance factor for adjacent landowners. The other item to kind of take note in terms of the land use bylaw, obviously if it is redesignated to intensive industrial, there are other uses, would still be subject to a development permit, but other uses are listed in that district. Those include heavy industrial, composting facility, hazardous industry, and work camp. So again, development permit would be required if they were to propose one of those things, again, if approved. But there wouldn't necessarily be a public hearing for those. It would just be through the development permit process. Other items within the area structure plan, as I mentioned, the light industrial area. The other item the area structure plan brings up with that is that it's not intended for the light area anyways. It's not intended for uses that have significant noise, odor, airborne emissions, lighting or vibration, and not depending on significant outdoor storage. So obviously this would have an outdoor storage component as well. The area structure plan also has a overlay area. You can see in yellow here, subject lands are in the red circle there. So this is the country residential transition overlay area. It's intended to provide additional guidance and mitigation strategies essentially on the boundaries of the area structure plan. So in this case, the mitigation plan was required. They mentioned it in the letter of intent. It's not very specific, but they did provide a conceptual visual impact assessment. Essentially shows kind of where they're planning to put screening and that type of thing that would be proposed through the development permit. So in summary, with the policies, the application proposed the development of a heavy industrial use within the light industrial area, and the supporting information doesn't satisfactorily accommodate those. As such, the proposal does not comply with the Goldfinch area structure plan. In terms of the landowners, we received a number of letters during our circulation. Also would just note that the applicant did their own engagement, so they have a letter there as well. So while this does not meet the policy, we're still recommending obviously that it proceed to public hearing, allow the applicant to have their opportunity to present. Yes, so we're moving first reading, or recommending removing first reading and scheduling a hearing for December 21st. So that concludes my presentation, and happy to take questions.
Any questions? Council's wishes. Oh, so sorry.
This looks like a fairly ill-prepared thing by these people. Like the risk assessment came from an example from Australia. I'm not really sure what that has to do with Canada. Are you going to ask them to do a little better job?
Through the chair, so the application is essentially, it's the applicant's responsibility to put forward an application that they feel is both convincing to adjacent landowners and council. So ultimately, you're the ones that make that determination. We've provided the requirements that are in the area structure plan, and given some typical examples and that type of thing. But yeah, essentially, it's their responsibility to put the information forward to convince you folks.
This wasn't terribly convincing as I looked at it last night.
So just from a process perspective, and administration can chime in, typically when we're considering bylaw amendments, staff are recommending that we proceed with first reading. Now, if I understand correctly, we could probably request further information prior to first reading, or we could proceed with first reading, hold a public hearing, hear input from the public and the app, like go through the same process we just did. And we could request more information at that point in time. I'm not sure what is more optimal. I know staff do work really hard, just this is in general terms, with every applicant to ensure that applications are complete as possible. Typically what's put before us is sort of the summation of what the applicant is willing to do. Is that fair comment?
Through the chair, that's exactly right. And I think the other thing to kind of consider is to give the applicant their opportunity to make their case. I mean, people present things maybe differently. Maybe if it's not that convincing on paper, maybe they can speak to things, or maybe answer questions, or whatever that might be. That might represent their case a little bit better. I also, like, if you get to that point and you find that case still not convincing, if we want to see some report or additional information, at least they would, you have the opportunity to ask them first. Maybe they can answer that. And then at that point, if you want to table the hearing and get that additional information, that's certainly available.
And just to supplement Stefan's comments, and just for information for Councillor Larson and Councillor Laprise, we had introduced kind of more of a streamlining process a couple years ago with respect to starting with first reading and then moving to public hearing second and third. With respect to sometimes applicants, they used to provide expensive plans and documentation up front first and foremost. So the first reading gives them a chance to kind of hear and then put together those expensive plans and documentation too, with the cost savings effect or something like that, right? So we were looking at it from that angle when we streamlined that as well. So sometimes, I'm not saying exclusive to this application, just in general, sometimes applications will come forward, they won't have those technical, and then they'll put them together kind of after that field so that they're not upfronting costs during the process. That's kind of a streamlining process as well. Okay, thanks.
I have a question on, so it's on, I believe this is to be true, that there is a resident living there now.
Through the chair, that's correct, yes.
Okay, and the screening, the fencing, the picture that shows here doesn't look like it's a complete screen. Is it just like a crisscross, so you could actually see through that? Or maybe the picture isn't very good.
Do you have the page number for that? I'm close here, I think, right?
I think it's in his application.
Page 67.
67, I guess.
Or sorry, 68.
68.
Right. Through the chair, it's tough to kind of say. I believe that's meant to be like a chain link fence, but
a chain link, though. Is it policy that you can still see through? It doesn't have to be blocked completely. Would that be the...
Yeah, so that's typically somebody would look, obviously to be,
right.
If it's like slats or something that's in there, sometimes it can be done through vegetation or berming. Again, it's tough to really tell from this. That's definitely something you could ask the applicant at that point. And then this is something that, if it is approved, they could do it at development permit stage, or again, you could say before it's actually approved, we want to see a better, more detailed screening.
And I just have a comment on the ASP. I went through that process with residents, and because of the area having quite a few residents on that side of the tracks, I mean, there was a reason why we did not put it into heavy industrial. So I'll leave that as just a comment for the motion. It was very clear that that's what the residents wanted.
Any other questions regarding the application? So administration's recommendation is to move first reading and schedule a public hearing. Council's wishes. Councillor Kester has moved first reading. Questions or discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. There's a recommendation to schedule a public hearing.
I'll move the notification for public hearing.
Resolution 2.
Yes, resolution 2.
Deputy Reeve Clausen has moved resolution 2 to schedule the public hearing. Any questions or discussion?
Just to be clear that I understand understand this. Once the public hearings happen, then they're still on. If they haven't done their work, we can still say no, correct?
Yes. So we'll go through the same process that we went through with the bylaw we just did. So the applicant will have an opportunity to present to council, anybody in support, anybody in opposition. At that point, council can make, as Stefan said, any requests for further information that we deem necessary. We typically reserve all debate for outside of the public hearing. You can ask questions, but it's basically just our time to hear from the public, hear from the applicant, and gain information. And then we reserve debate for once the public hearing is closed. As Stefan referenced, we can recess the public hearing and reconvene it at a future date as well. That would be prudent if we were requesting further information, just so that the same public have the same opportunity to respond to any further information that's provided by the applicant, and for the applicant to speak to that to council. Just because of the gravity of redesignation, there's strict processes involved with it. Yes, Councillor Custer.
This is council's opportunity to have a full vetting with the public. It's the public's opportunity to come in at a set stage where they can voice their recommendations, their objections, their wishes. So, being we've had first reading now, councillors should try and refrain from discussing this project with anybody in private. It's important from now on that all of council hears the same information in the same way. So if you get an email, just fire it off to Matt, he'll fire it off to everybody, meet everybody. But the optimum time is for the public hearing. And that's what we hear in the public hearing, how you will vote. So some members of council will have an intimate knowledge of the place, and other councillors have probably never been there. This is your chance to ask questions and then listen to the public. And that's, me personally, that is where we get to interact with the public and we really get to know what they want. So if nobody comes, well, but if lots come and they want to discern it at the time, right? So, yeah, it's our chance, it's the public's chance.
I have a question, and I've been asked this before. If they sent a letter in the first process, does it carry on to the second process? Or do they have to rewrite another letter?
No, through the chair, yeah, it'll still be in the actual package. When we send the circulation initially, it says, please provide your comments. We'll do that again when we schedule the hearing, but we just want to make sure that as many people have the opportunity to provide their information.
So one of the letters, there was an attachment to the email that didn't get put in the package, just so... Yeah.
Sorry, my apologies.
And I did get that too,
Okay.
so I just want you to know that. If you could add that in.
Yeah, we'll maybe have you just connect with details after to make sure that that's included in the next package. And yeah, just to build on what Councillor Custer said, absolutely right. Once the public hearing is scheduled, we really do refrain from sort of any conversation with the public or the applicant or anyone with concerns. The rationale for that is we want all of council to have access to all of the same information when deliberating on the decision. So if somebody does contact you, like Glenn said, you either send them to administration or copy everything to council and administration, let them know that, you know, the appropriate place is at the public hearing, and that's the opportunity to share that information. So it's just so that we have really good process. And yes, Councillor Custer.
Somebody tries to talk to me, I give them 3 options. They talk to me, I have to try and make your views known, which is bad. And email in to staff your comments, that's way better. And like talking to me is in person or phone. And the best thing to do is to show up here at the public hearing in person. That's how I value your comments. If you take the time out of your day to actually come here, it's important to you, I figure in my mind. If you send an email, it's a little down the ladder, and just talk to me someplace in the corner, I can't engage you at all. That's how I answer them. Encourage them to participate in the process is the best way.
We have a motion on the floor to schedule the public hearing.
I was just going to elaborate on one point, just a procedural point and a legislative point. Section 188 of the MGA just notes that if a proposed bylaw receives first reading and it does not receive third reading within 2 years after the first reading, it's automatically rescinded. And also, if it's defeated on second or third reading, it's automatically rescinded as well. Just a legislative point, nothing to do with the motion. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's a good point. So just because we're giving first reading, essentially first reading is saying we'll hear you out. We do have the opportunity, though, if we are adamantly opposed to an application, to not proceed with to not approve first reading. But there is some merit, like Stefan said, in giving the applicant that opportunity to present and for the public to present as well. So at least that's my perspective. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.13, bylaw 2021-10.
Right, hello again, Council. Stefan Kuntz from Administration. So this is the third reading of bylaw 2021-10, which is the Wheatland County and Rockview County Intermunicipal Development Plan. So we just note this was done prior to the election. I won't get into all the details of it, but essentially the purpose of an intermunicipal development plan is to foster a collaborative planning approach for lands along a common border between two municipalities. So this plan area is approximately 68,000 acres in size. It's 1 mile on either side of the boundary with Rockview County. So Council will recall this from earlier in the year. It was given first reading on April 20th, and the public hearing was held and second reading was granted on May 18th. So through the summer, ourselves and our counterparts at Rockview have submitted this to the Calgary Metropolitan Regional Board. This is in accordance with the Interim Regional Evaluation Framework. So the CMRB assessed the IDP, approved it on September 27th. That's then subject to appeal. Appeal period ran until October 28th, and nobody appealed in that time. So we're free to move to third reading. If it's approved here and Rockview approves it, they're anticipating to do it on November 30th, then the plan would take effect. Yeah, so that concludes my application. We're obviously recommending third reading and happy to take any questions.
You mentioned the word appeal in a public hearing. How does that work?
Through the chair. So the public hearing was the one that we did. That was on May 18th. The appeal part that's through the Interim Regional Evaluation Framework. So for any of these policy documents that have that regional standing through the CMRB, we have to submit it to them in accordance with that framework. That's then approved by like their third-party kind of administrative staff, as long as it meets all of the the growth plan and those type of things. Then they would approve it. That's still then subject to the rest of the board potentially appealing something. So in this case, obviously it didn't have significant impact to any of the other members, so nobody appealed it.
We're the only board that can appeal.
In terms of for like a policy, yes. Yeah.
Generally, bylaws are non-appealable. They're a statutory thing, right?
That's correct, yes.
Council's wishes.
I'll move third reading of bylaw 21-10.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Just to note, councillors 1 and 7 should abstain from voting.
I believe they did, because I was...
Yes. Just because the public hearing was held on May 18th.
So I'll just call once more. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. We'll move to 2.14, bylaw 2021-32, Code of Conduct.
Good morning, Council. Tracy from Administration. I'm here to present amendments to Code of Conduct Bylaw 2021-32 During council orientation, the Code of Conduct bylaw was reviewed, and there was concern expressed regarding section 4.1H. This has been amended to improve on the clarity of the section. The amendments within the bylaw are in red. You'll notice on the first page, just minor amendments. And then on page 4 is the actual change made. Are there any questions?
Council's wishes.
I'll move first reading.
Thank you, Councillor Kester. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
I'll move second reading.
Councillor Eichert has moved second reading. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
I'll move for permission to be granted to hold third and final reading.
Councillor Bigger has moved. All in favor? Motion is carried unanimously. So just a note to the newer councillors, anytime that we do 3 readings of a bylaw in one meeting, we need unanimous consent to proceed to the 3rd reading. So that's why we differentiate that motion. Motion was carried unanimously.
I'll move third and final reading of bylaw 2021-32.
Councillor Bigger has moved. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thanks, everybody. We're going to move to 2.22.
Just a note, I believe we approved the schedule to have the bylaw 2021-30, the bylaw enforcement.
Oh, yes.
Officer bylaw.
My apologies. Yes. And 2.16 as well. So, my apologies. Welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of council. Chris Perman, Senior Peace Officer. I'm here this morning to present bylaw 2021-30, which is an update of the bylaw enforcement officer bylaw for Leland County. In the MGA, if the municipality wants to have bylaw officers, they have to have a bylaw to regulate the powers and duties thereof and how the CAO manages them. So the current bylaw that's in place is bylaw 2013-42, and several of the sections are inconsistent with other bylaws and put power and authority into hands that shouldn't be under the MGA. So therefore, the new bylaw will rescind those powers and put them back into the proper hands of the administration and CEO as required. It also clarifies the complaint process against bylaw officers, and I just want to make sure we're clear. It's separate from the peace officer program. So we are duly appointed. We're appointed as bylaw officers for the county. We're also appointed as peace officers for the province. And so the interpretation is such that if a complaint were to come in against an officer based again on an investigation of a bylaw, it would be dealt with under this bylaw. If it is under a complaint that comes in that it should be dealt with, or that is in regards to one of our provincial appointments, it would be dealt with under the Peace Officer Act and their regulations. So that's what this is, and it just makes the new bylaw consistent with our HR policies and make sure that we are treated the same as other employees. The old bylaw had it pretty crazy out there, the differences between the disciplinary actions that could be taken against an officer versus what could be taken against other staffs. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions.
Excellent. Any questions from council? Council's wishes.
I'll move that we approve first reading of bylaw 2021-30.
So that's a bylaw enforcement officer bylaw, being a bylaw that regulates the appointment and duties of bylaw enforcement officers employed by Wheatland County. I'm only reading that just because it's not in our package, just so that it's very transparent for the public, because this was an addition. So, Councillor Laprise has moved. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
I'll move second reading of bylaw 2021-30.
Any questions or discussion?
Yes, read all the changes.
Sure. We could take a 5-minute recess just so that council has an opportunity to review the bylaw. If we need longer, just let me know. So we'll take a 5-minute break. We'll reconvene at 9:45. Back to order. So it has been brought to our attention that there is not necessarily a tight timeline for approving the updated bylaw. So if council would prefer, we could consider second reading, and then we could wait and hold third reading at a future council meeting. That way the bylaw will be a part of the public record in a council package, and it will give council further time to thoroughly review the bylaw because there are significant amendments to it. So if council's in favor of that, perhaps we could hold third reading and then just, or second reading, thank you, and then wait to hold third reading until a future meeting. I love when you correct me, so it's perfect. Council's wishes.
I'll move second reading.
Thank you. Councillor Laursen has moved second reading. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you for bringing this forward. I think it's excellent. I appreciate it. So administration will just bring that forward for third reading consideration at a future date. We'll move to 2.16. Community conversation.
That would be 2.26.
Oh my word. Was it? Okay. Yeah, no. 2.2. Oh, 2.23 maybe? We could do business arising. Or we could do 2.314. Do you have a preference?
It might be good to do, so I'm just working up on the screen. We could do 2.2.2, the joint meeting, the addition of, the addition to the agenda for general discussion of the Town of Strathmore dinner.
Yeah.
If council would like to discuss that one.
Okay, and then I have community conversation on housing in the wrong place, so should we put that under 2.2 business arising or 2.3 new business?
Either or. I guess it really doesn't matter.
Let's do it 2.23. So then I don't have to move it as far on my paper. That's laziness right there. Okay, we're going to move to 2.22. Joint meeting with the town. I believe CAO Henderson received a request.
Yes, I did. So the CAO at the Town of Strathmore had emailed me a request last week to see if council was interested in attending a joint dinner with the town. I believe the general purpose would be networking. And the meeting was scheduled for December 14th. The exact date. Just stand by.
It is December 14th.
Okay, so I thought I'd just leave that for council discussion and consideration. Thank you.
So just for some context for new councillors, typically, or at least in our last term, at the beginning of the term, we did do some outreach and engagement just with our neighboring municipalities. So some of the rural municipalities around us, we will make an active effort to get to know the councillors that we interact with. At times there's development issues on borders where it's really good to have that sort of pre-established relationship with our neighbours. We do have several opportunities through RMA events with the convention coming up. There may be an opportunity to engage with Rocky View, for example. They have some new councillors, but we don't always, through some of those events, have opportunities to meet with our urban neighbors. And so we did do, I know in 2017 we had a dinner with the town of Strathmore just to get both of our councils together, introduce ourselves, more of an informal sort of opportunity to start establishing a relationship or building on the relationship that we had with the councillors that were there before. And then we do at times have meetings with the town of Strathmore, or we do also try and conduct any business that might affect sort of our more urban neighbors, including the villages, at those Wheatland Regional Partnership meetings, which we typically have sort of quarterly. And that's a good opportunity to bring forward sort of issues or concerns, advocacy items that might affect all of us in this region. And Siksika has been invited to join those as well. So we have a couple of opportunities, but I had a good opportunity to meet some of the new councillors from the villages through our training that administration had scheduled with legal. I thought that was really nice. We didn't get to meet all of them. Not everybody was able to attend, but that was nice to at least meet them. And we did, I think, meet some of the town of Strathmore councillors through the Chamber of Commerce event that they hosted, which was incredible. But I know not all of the new councillors were able to attend that either. So I support the meeting for sure. CAO Henderson.
And just one other item to note that in the strategic plan of Wheatland County, the key result 9 is develop strategic partnerships. The strategic plan is available on the website as well. It is just to leverage partnerships with surrounding communities to continue to meet the growing needs and demands of the county. So we may be able to integrate that point as well. Thank you.
What's the date again? I was playing with my computer.
The proposed date by the town of Strathmore CAO would be December 14th for the meeting to start between 5:30 and 6.
14th at?
Between 5:30 and 6 to start. Please. To be determined.
Okay.
So that day we do have Municipal Planning Commission in the morning, so it may work well. And yeah, we could let administrations probably sort out details for where and that type of thing.
Just a meeting for meeting's sake, there's no agenda we're discussing.
Well, I mean, it's at council's will. If there are specific topics that we might want to discuss with the town, perhaps people could bring those forward and we could consider, say, at our first December meeting, if there are agenda items we want to bring forward, specifics. I would like to give the town like a heads up if there are specific things we'd like to discuss, just so that they're aware.
I just want to let you know that when we did that before, that it's really hard to hear from one end of the table to the other end of the table. And I felt like I was not included in what was discussed at the one end. So I would say no agenda, just networking.
There could be an opportunity to hold it in somewhere like the ECC, not structured like our training was, but you could do like a large round table where we have a meal, but it still is more conducive to more, because I've found the same thing, absolutely. And you don't even necessarily get to meet everybody because you're so sort of, yeah, it's an option. We can certainly just leave it at that and then conduct any sort of more formal discussion at either Wheatland Regional or at a future meeting. Yes?
And that's why I sent an email to Glenn the other day, because I wanted to confirm, because I mean, we just about slipped into that issue once already where we started making decisions and debating and stuff. So I think we probably want to be clear and maybe not have an agenda, because otherwise it's too easy to start into that without even realizing what we're doing.
Yeah, and just further to that, that's an excellent point. Anytime we do meetings, say with municipal neighbors or that type of thing, we do it with council at times. Obviously, there can be no decisions made at those events. Anything that might arise from them would always come back to this table for full council discussion, and any decisions made would be made in a council meeting. It's an excellent point.
Even the ECC, keep the circle small, tables opposed to each other. The further you get from that room, it's noisy.
Yep.
And required. It's got a positive air pressure in there. And that's, don't sit in that corner.
Yeah.
It's Muslim today.
With the town's new building, maybe they have room in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they're the ones that are hosting it. So I
Like
would
to see
suggest
that.
they would be the ones that should.
Yes, I can
See their new office.
Yeah, that actually isn't too bad.
I can make that point to their CAO that it's very important that the meeting space be conducive to like clear, audible discussions
Yeah,
from any
that's
end of the table.
Yeah, let's leave the details up to the two administrations. They can work it out. We should probably have a motion if we're going to proceed, so I'll leave it to council's wishes. To schedule a sort of meet and greet meeting with the town of Strathmore for December 14th.
Great.
Okay.
That'd be clear.
Okay. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.23. Community conversation housing. This was a request that came forward. Initially, it came forward as a calendar invite without a lot of context. The meeting minutes that are with your package, like with your agenda, were also circulated. I did email just inquiring about further information just because I didn't really have any context for the invitation. And the response that I got, sorry, I should have had it pulled up. The response was that Lynn Walker from Wheatland FCSS requested that I add you to the meeting. The conversation is an interagency group, more or less. So interagency, our board members for WFCSS will be familiar. It's that large kind of conglomerate of all of the sort of social services agencies that meet regularly. They are discussing the challenges related to housing and related barriers. I'll let Lynn reach out to you to provide more information on the role she sees you playing. We have not invited Strathmore Council to the meeting, but we do have community organizations that our council members are involved in at the table. So my initial thoughts were it might be appropriate to have a housing board representative consider attending at this. But I know you have been really busy with.
I'm not sure what you're talking that last.
There's a community conversation on housing meeting minutes under your agenda. Under your paper agenda, sorry. This came as a calendar invite for me to join a meeting. It's actually tomorrow at 2 o'clock, I think. I'll double check that.
Oh, I've heard about this meeting.
Have you? Okay. So I didn't accept the calendar invitation just because I wasn't clear on why. I assumed I was being invited as a representative of Wheatland County, but obviously I needed some council direction on that. The minutes were provided so you can see sort of the representatives and the organizations that were in attendance at the meeting and some of the discussion. The discussion starts on the third page under ideas and discussion. So it looks like they're looking at a potential grant, potentially bringing in community futures, liaisoning with Siksika, looking at needs for people with disabilities, looking at capacity in rural communities, shuttle busing, transportation concerns. Families do not fit the criteria for the handy bus as they have young kids and are not seniors, etc. You can see there's a fair amount of discussion there. When I reached out, not a lot of further information was provided. That's what I just shared, that kind of Lynn was the one that suggested that perhaps I be invited. my initial thoughts were that it might make more sense to have a representative from the housing board, just because they do look at sort of the affordable, they provide the affordable housing as well to the region. Glenn, I know that you have historically been quite busy with building committee meetings. I didn't know if, I think we have Shannon and Tom as well, if one of them may want to attend this, or if anybody has time, or if this is something we would rather they just kind of connect with the housing board itself directly. I'm open to council direction. I just wanted to bring it forward for everybody's information.
Remember, we talked about this meeting, have a board representative in Rita. For issues on action for social housing. She wasn't able to make the meeting, and she read the minutes and had some concerns. And there was questions and concerns. Rita will be continuing to go to this meeting as part of the board. I think it's more directed. First meeting, social housing. We do have some social housing in ours legislation. Transportation, pertinent issues for sure. If I notice Denise Peterson went to the meeting, he is also on board. Monitors or FCSS. If the county wants to send a sure, it's a great way to learn more issues. Greater issue, because that's where the housing needs are more. I heard that First Nations were there and they made their case quite good, so that's good too. It doesn't hurt to go to the meeting and gain information. For me, myself, I would decline from doing that. It's busy enough. It would be a good opportunity for Shannon maybe to go, and then she can report to council and to the board. Yeah. That would be a good idea. I don't know how frequently the meetings are.
No, and I don't either. The next scheduled one is...
I can apprise the board of, or the council of, when this come up at our board meeting, and maybe it wasn't the board meeting, it would have been at a meeting I had with Vicky, the CAO. There was some concerns. Do you remember any of this talk, Tom? We were on the phone, but I had Vicky's. We did her evaluation, right? And I had lunch with her. Maybe that's when this conversation came up.
I honestly don't. I mean, some of this stuff has been like individual points have been, but I don't remember anything specifically about this project here, whatever this actual project is, right? I remember
it's new,
right? And I don't even think Bev talked about it in her report. So
she had some concerns, but I'm thinking it's a meeting I had with the CAO. These concerns. And so, as chair of the board, or we don't know if I'll be chair again, but I told her I would make myself available for the staff to go to these meetings if they. That's another reason I don't want to represent. Only wear one hat at these meetings. And it's going to be hard for a board member, but it's more information. So it's not like you're making decisions there. I don't think it hasn't come.
Perhaps just because of the limited information that we have so far, it might be prudent. Shannon, the only meeting I know about is tomorrow at 2:00. It's virtual, so via Zoom. I don't know if council would be supportive of perhaps sending Shannon to get more information. You could bring it back to council, and you could also bring it back to the housing board. It does look like there is a lot more like administration attending, or like staff of different agencies than necessarily elected officials. But if there's a governance piece to it, you could let us know, and we could go from there. So
I'm not exactly sure where they're trying to head, but I can find that out. To go is to be involved is for information purposes, nothing else.
Yeah.
Good thing.
I move that Shannon represent county at this meeting. Bring the information back and send that to infancy. That's the best meeting to go to is the first one. Make further determinations after.
Questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Shannon, I will send the information to you at lunchtime.
Thank you.
Anybody feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're moving to 2.31.
Yes, good morning, Council. So Brian from Administration. On page 137 of your agenda package is the Council Resolution Tracker. So anything in green has been noted as complete. Anything in yellow is still outstanding. So the report starts on page 140. If there are any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Any questions from council? A motion to accept as information.
Just one question. No, I didn't look at it with this computer. Just a little bit better. It's hard to read. I don't know if we can get rid of maybe a couple columns or just, you know, your highlight ones. The first 3 columns are what's got most of the rating. I don't know, Brian.
You know, you can.
Something you can.
I am open to any suggestions that council is willing to put forward and approve.
So Councillor Custer, right at the top, you'll have a toolbar. You can increase your
but then
enlargement.
Loses width, and I got to go back and forth. And this makes for an interrupted read for me. Like if I could just scroll down and catch the high points.
Sure. Is that something?
Some thought if you can.
Is that something that administration might be able to work with you just to see if we can get a better viewing feature of this report?
Just got a new computer. Maybe it's good. Maybe if I take this line out.
I do like the update. Like I like the columns that are there, just the update, the date completed and how it was completed. Just even for tracking purposes, I find that quite helpful.
How about just leave it alone and let me play with my computer, see if I can get a widescreen shot.
Yeah.
I get rid of the agendas on the side.
Oh yeah, that can help. Just the X at the top beside bookmarks should close that. And then if you want to reopen it, there's a little flag on the left.
Now I can plus it. There, I can read it now. Thanks, Brian. Just read it.
Perfect. I don't think I did anything, but that's okay.
Oh yeah, that's 100%.
Yeah, awesome. Any other questions? We will look for a motion to accept. I don't believe there's been one made. Okay, Deputy Reeve Clausen has moved. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.32, Legislative Policy Section 5 amendments.
Yes, good morning, Council. So Council did ask for administration to make specific amendments during the organizational meeting on November 1st and bring back the amendments for Council consideration. So the discussion at the organizational meeting really surrounded the half-day per diem during the day. So we edited that. Any changes to the policy were changed in red. So what we try to do is just kind of summarize this. And then we also made a point of adding in the section of a combination of multiple meetings on the same day that has a total duration of under 4 hours will be compensated as 1 per diem total. So that change is in red on page 115. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Council's wishes.
I'll move that we approve the proposed amendments to Wheatland Legislative Policy, Section 5.1.1 and Section 5.1.2.
Questions or discussion?
Basically the way it used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I actually did mean to go back and look at when we did the Winford group, but I think that might have been in closed session, and I don't know that we can discuss it in open session.
I'd have to confirm.
I have it marked as confidential, so anyways, it doesn't matter too much. I don't necessarily personally agree with this, and it's not because I'm being selfish or anything. And I hesitate to discuss it because it does, like, I recognize we have to approve compensation to us because nobody else can. And because it does impact me because I do have a number of daytime meetings, but I don't necessarily agree with this. I think there was a rationale for changing it. Part of the rationale from my perspective was I don't necessarily agree with evening meetings at times. Evening meeting, like, it would be different for each councillor whether an evening meeting is more of a hardship or whether a daytime meeting is more of a hardship. Sometimes other employment or childcare or those types of considerations can be harder during the day. Sometimes it can be harder during the evening. I get family time, very valid, but depending on people's partners' schedules, you may have more time with your spouse during the day. I have no idea. The fact of the matter is there are multiple times where I may have a 4-hour meeting with substantial preparation during the day where I spend just as much time and effort or more on that meeting than I might on, say, an 1.5-hour meeting in the evening or that type of thing. But I am completely at council's will, and I am not doing this job for the pay, for sure. So I'm at council's will. I see the point, and I have actually been doing it this way. Part of what I wanted to clean up was the combination of multiple days, and like that was a concern to me, and I didn't want, like, I did not want that to be a possibility, and I didn't anticipate anybody would do it. But it was one of those things where you have policy in place to prevent sort of worst case scenario. What I'm referring to there is, say you had 3 meetings in a day that were all less than 4 hours. Like, you should never be paid more than a full per diem is what I'm trying to go to. So I have used like 0.5. Twice in a day, or 0.25 4 times in a day if I've had 4. I don't know if I've ever used 0.25, but 0.5, and then not, like, for 2 and then not charged for 1, say done it that way. But I'm at council's will, and it's honestly not. And there are times too, just compensation considerations if somebody is employed and they need to take the day off work. Some of our meetings, you're not sure if it's going to for sure be under 4 hours, or MPC we always know is less than half a day. Council we typically know is going to be a full day, but there are other meetings that we attend at times that you may need to take the entire day off of work, or schedule childcare or that type of thing for the entire day, because you don't know if it's going to be 5 hours or 3 or 4 or whatever. Anyways, I'm not trying to be greedy in any way. That is not my intention.
Link, if I could make a point, and this is information for new councillors. So we have an existing policy that we have a council compensation committee that reviews the compensation of all councillors at the county. That committee is made up of 3 ratepayers in the county. So we just held it in over the summer, and council accepted the information or recommendations as information. The recommendations were to not change the policy. However, at council direction during the organizational meeting, what we ended up doing is bringing back those proposed amendments as were suggested by council, which is actually a reduction in council compensation. So it does go against the actual committee's recommendations, which is to the discretion of council. So ultimately, that's kind of where we sit today. And Council can also ask administration to make further amendments to the policy. They can ask to remove certain items. They can ask to leave in the combination of meetings under 4 hours. That can stay. The half day can go. Ultimately, it's at the discretion of council. If council requests further information, that's okay too. We can always do that and bring it back further for future consideration. Ultimately, the point that we're trying to do for this policy is leave zero room for any ambiguity. We're trying to make it as clear as possible.
Councillor Kester.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, we get paid a rate per month. I thought that rate per month was to review all your meetings and answer phone calls, stuff like that. At the organization, my concern was with this policy, there was some thinking they wanted to put half days down. I typically don't do that unless it is only a half a day. If I have 2 meetings in a day, I'll just tick one, as Margaret sometimes changes it for me. But I only want to be paid for 1 day, and that way there's no getting 2 half days and getting paid that higher rate, because I did not want to be paid more than the day rate. I'm here for the day, and I'll do my meetings during the day. If I go in the evening, and typically per day meetings are longer than 4 hours. We have MPC, and they're usually less than half a day. I'm thinking with new council members and stuff, there's going to be a push to have committee of the wholes and stuff and turn it into a whole day, which is great. We're here, fine, make it a whole day and get some work done. The evening meetings for me are a little bit different. It's taken me away from family, for one thing. But typically, when we come up with this different rate, I'm not quite in that, about 40 minutes from the office, depending if I got a road to go travel on or complaint or whatever, but still about 40 minutes. So time I get ready for the meeting, 40 minutes, go to the meeting. I'm pushing the 4 hours anyway. Maybe last night we didn't leave here till 11:30. That's a full day rate, and I'm only getting half a day. So you take the good with the bad. Evening meetings to me are more disruptive to my life. It's a consideration for it. It's just not the time to spend in the meeting. And I know I'm probably average in the county. There are some shorter, some way longer considerably. And you got to account for that time too. It's time. And if it's depending on the time of year, if I happen to be in Rosebud all dirty, I got to come home and shower, get ready, get dressed, and go to an evening meeting there. I've chalked up a couple hours there too. Just takes time out of your day. It takes the productive time out of my day getting ready for it. So I support the policy. I support the change to 128 for half-day meetings. This policy was originally brought up. There was very few half-day meetings. We always filled it. We never had a dedicated day for MPC. We would do MPC when it got short, when the development shorted up. And then we would have this council meeting after MPC. And it was a council meeting, like this meeting, we would do planning in the council. It would be after MPC, and we'd fill up the whole day, so hence we never had a half a day before. And if we continue having MPC at half hour to 10 minutes, maybe we can consider moving our council meeting, having an 11 o'clock start or something, have a full day. That's what we used to do when it got. And before then, we had MPC, and it would last better part of a day. I'll keep going. With our area structure plans being approved, we had so many area structure plans we would talk about being they got approved. We didn't have them conversations anymore. So the meeting was more what it is today. We don't have to work on plans. So that's why it got short. that was the idea, to shorten the meeting so we didn't have to have it. So we are moving in that direction. So I can support this policy the way it is.
Well, I've got my time card right for the last 2 times in a row, and that's amazing. So I'm going to go ahead. This is even more straightforward. So I'll move that we approve the proposed amendment to the Wheatland County Legislative Policy 9.1.1 elective officials remuneration and section 2.1.2 appointment non-elected committee members remuneration as presented.
I think we do. Shannon made the motion to make the amendments as presented. So we do have a motion on the floor.
Okay.
So as long as you weren't offering an amendment, then we have a standing motion.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion?
Administration assistant is still going to be able to bail me out, right? That's all I care about. Yep. Perfect. Fantastic. We do it wrong, it'll be fixed. Yeah, exactly. It's not intentional, but
I guess I made the motion that it adds clarity. I didn't know there was a discussion about the actual rates.
No, and it's good to put the motion on the floor. And this is the most awkward conversation in the world, and I honestly detest it. I could pull up, it was probably a difference of like $200 last month, a reduction in my pay. That's totally fine. There is some context around that I hesitate to share, but it's historical where it's probably fine, like generalities. But the compensation was like significantly adjusted at one point, but not to the point where it like brought the Reeves pay in line with other municipalities. There was, I don't know.
Remember?
Yep.
Being we have some new counselors, I'm saying all of you, when we developed this policy, we didn't have half days. And the policy was more of daytime meetings are 256, evening meetings are 187. There was no half days. We didn't have half days, so we didn't talk about it. So this council's come up with MPC mostly. Ag Service Board has always traditionally been a half day, but there's always been little meetings after it, and it was never a worry. So this council, being frugally as they are, come up with a half day thing, and we just started putting half days in for MPC. This policy more or less kind of clarifies that a half day rate will be. Or policy before this, I guess I talked about it then too. We had 2 different half day rates. We had an evening half day rate, and we had an afternoon half day rate, and it was why was it? That's the reasoning why. In Houston, when we did the rates, there was no half day rate. Now this council's doing a half day rate. Maybe they should clarify why. And I think this does a good job.
But I see Amber's point that a half a day in the evening or a half a day in the daytime maybe should be the same amount. But are we in a position to change this, the actual rates? I mean, I think we asked them just to bring clarity.
Yes, council can make any change to this policy.
And understanding that I'm new and I don't know the history of this, but you can easily make the argument that there's as much preparation for a half-day rate as there is for a full-day meeting. So maybe the way it was actually more fair, because it takes into account the time that you have to spend prepping for the meetings and stuff. Whether the meeting lasts 4 hours or 8 hours, you have the same prep time. That's just a thought.
So how we did it, I'm just trying to clarify. what you mean. So when we first came on council, there was a full day per diem and there was a partial day per diem that paid after 6 p.m. So often that was committee meetings, although some committee meetings meet during the day. And we always took, and correct me if I'm remembering incorrectly, we always took a full day if the meeting was during the day. Particularly, but then at times we would have a very short meeting, so we would take 0.5 as it's written with the amendments today. That was in 2017, as I recall. In 2018 or 2019, and I believe I disclosed this in a previous council meeting, but it was also presented to council like in closed session, but I do also think we should be really transparent about our pay. But we undertook, and we've referenced this before, that total compensation review for the county, where they did like a cohort of other municipalities. We looked at staff, and then that also did include council. During that review, and I won't use numbers, but I'll just use generalities, there were recommendations brought forward by Winford, where we did all of the adjustments to the staff, and we did adjustments to council. At that time, they found our reeve pay was significantly under market value to the tune of, say, 17-ish%. Council was, say, around 7%, like just in general. Brian, do you think there's any issue in disclosing that Winford Group number just about council?
No, I don't.
And so I already just did it.
So one thing I am certain of, and I was literally just walking over to my computer to chat with Matt, was to pull up that motion that was made in 2019, because I believe there was a motion after the in-camera discussion to accept that report as information. So accepting that report as information means that there would be nothing confidential about it. Realistically, it's just market rates.
Yeah. And that's why I'm like, there was nothing. I think the staff pay stuff certainly needs to be confidential. I think the council pay, we need to be transparent about our pay. And because we have new councillors that were not privy to the report, I'll just be very general if that's okay.
And I can also just confirm that during the 11 o'clock presentation.
Sure. Based on recommendations, there were adjustments to pay. The recommendations that Winford recommended, they recommended an increase to the reeve pay of $14,399, and we added an RSP program. At that same time, the provincial government changed the legislation that made, I believe, 1/3 of our pay previously was not taxable. And so so essentially all municipally elected councillors saw somewhat of a take-home pay decrease because you were no longer having that tax deduction. So the RSP program was, from my recollection, to kind of make up for that potential loss in take-home income, if you will, right? So the recommendation was $14,399. We increased reeve pay by $5,023. The recommendation to include increased council pay was at $4,800. We increased it by $2,900. And then also like RSP matching programs. So it left the reeve position under market by around 12%, council under market by around 3%, and I believe deputy reeve was close to market value. That was based on, the reeve's pay was based on 12 per diems being paid a month for those market values when they were looking at the Wheatland County pay. I have not added up how many per diems I typically have per month, but it's certainly, I don't think, typically 12. And I'm only sharing this because it is contextual information, and like I said, this is incredibly awkward. I recognize the daytime rates probably affect me, and Deputy Reeve Clausen at times as well. More so, we tend to have commitments that are during the day, I think, more than the rest of council at times, and I hate that I'm having to have this conversation. So that's it. I'm done.
One thing to note as well, that if council's not comfortable with the amount of information that you currently have,
yeah, I'm sorry.
It is also an option for Councillor Laprise to withdraw your motion, then request more information on this as well. Just a consideration.
So I will just share what I think is, from my perspective, fair. I think how we were doing it between, say, I don't know exactly when the changes were made, but I think how we were doing it was fair. for meetings up to 4 hours to be at the partial day. For meetings exceeding between 4 and 8 hours, do the full day. Recognizing that at times you may have a commitment in the evening that might be a partial. The example I'm giving, say you had 15 hours of meetings in a day, I see that fair if you had a partial after. If you have an 8-hour council meeting and then you go to a 4-hour committee meeting, which I have done, I can see like separating out that daytime and the evening. You should never have more than a full day during the day, if that makes sense. But I do disagree with doing the 0.5 of a full day if that's your only meeting. So, or we could also reconvene the compensation committee and have them address it. Like
what I worry about is that there are people that are going to be like, whether or not the 0.5 thing I use a lot because that's sort of what I think is fair, and what you may go to the same meeting. I've got 15 minutes to get home, and I could maybe do this. I do the meeting, get home. I'm home by lunchtime. That to me is a 0.5. You've got a lot further to travel. You're home at 1:30 and you go a full day. I've got no problem with that. So I'm not looking at, like all of us have to answer, as long as this isn't exorbitant, all of us have to answer to ourselves to what we're doing here, right? We have to answer to ourselves. We have to answer to our ratepayers. And everything I do, I believe I can justify to my ratepayers. So I just don't want anybody to feel guilty about, if we do the work, we got to get paid for the job, right? And some of us have way more committees than others. You have to be able to, I want you to be 100%, invested in each one of the committees that you're in. Like, I don't want you going, well, crap, I spent already this kind of time here, just go through the motion. So, it's not going to make any difference what we do here. I'm going to still basically build the same way. If I'm, it's like I said, I think you have to, in your heart of hearts, if you can justify what you're billing, and it's not, and it's just within our framework, that's on you. Right? I got no problem with that. So that's sort of the way. I don't care how we do it, and I don't care what we end up doing. But I don't want to see anybody feel that they are being underappreciated for this job. If we got a program here that says we're supposed to be adequately compensated for the job. So that's it.
I have a few meetings after our half-day meeting. But if we're paying $187 for a half-day meeting, I can't put down 2 half-day meetings during the day. Put down 1 meeting for the day.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay. I did not want ever on my timesheet to go over the 256 for a daytime meeting, no matter what I'm doing. So you want to put down a half a day, no matter what the rate is. It was easier at the 128 for a half a day, because then you could put a half a day on another one and get paid your full day and everything looked fine. But when it changed to the 187 for a half, when you put down half, you're getting more than the 256, which is not fine in my books. For daytime meetings, 256, period. So that's why I personally would just put down maybe by that MPC that day looked a full day, and Tom's is a half a day, but then I spent another half a day or 2 years, whatever it was, doing something else. Tom says I have to answer to my ratepayers too, and we deserve to be paid for what we're doing, but only for what we're doing. So that's why I like the 187 the evening, the 128 the daytime. It's a half a day, makes it look cleaner. Otherwise, you're going to start. I would never do it. You could say 0.44 this, and, and figure it out after. But who's going to take the time?
That was clear as mud.
Any other
Exactly.
questions or discussion? We have a motion on the floor.
Should I withdraw my motion? Or should we? I don't know.
It's your choice. I think the motion was to approve the amended policy as presented with the amendments presented.
I guess I'll let it stand.
Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. We will move to 2.32.
Oh,
3.33, sorry.
Yes. So good morning, Council. Brian again from administration. So on page 154, there are the meetings that have been discussed at previous council meetings. So there's joint meetings between Siksika Nation and the town of Strathmore and Wheatland County. So what we kind of had decided to do as an administration, just to make it a little bit easier, is just to recommend that the approval for the REEF to attend up to 12 joint meetings between Siksika Nation, the town of Strathmore, and Wheatland County, just from the time frame of today until the next organizational meeting. And this is just to kind of streamline council meetings and approve attendance at these meetings.
Just going to say that 12 meetings, there's no possible way you can. I think there's too many, because you're having a meeting, you cannot, you had a meeting this month, you've only got 30 days to enact whatever you decided on the last meeting. I think it's too many, but like I've got no problem with whatever if you want. I just think that 12 joint meetings are it's probably 6 too many, I would guess, just off my feeling, just because you have to incorporate this. So I just don't want to be at meetings for the sake of having meetings, right? Like, because if you're not getting anything done, then there's no point wasting your time.
So there's a proposed meeting dates on page 157. They're not scheduled monthly at this point.
Okay.
I didn't mind the administration put in up to 12 just in case some massive issue arises. We don't have to bring it back and debate it again. My intention is to keep this as streamlined as possible. We also have our IDP committee, the Deputy Reeve Clausen and I are sitting on, I think, with Councillor Bigger as an alternate to work on a memorandum of understanding. Obviously, we have Wheatland Regional Partnership if Siksika is able to join that. So this is just, I do think that there is good work being done here. Any information that is gleaned at those meetings will be brought back to council. Obviously, no decisions will be made there, that type of thing. I liked council's or administration's recommendation. I actually had no input into the 12. I do appreciate it if council would consider that, just to give some leeway if there is a larger issue that arises and for some reason the meeting schedule does become more regular. But I agree with you. They also are conducting some of their work that I think Wheatland County might consider outside of our scope at committee meetings, which at this point I'm not committed to any committees, but I do get to hear all of the activities and the efforts from the committees at those at the joint meetings. So it shouldn't be monthly, but
when I look at the work plan founded on the MOU here, a lot of these that I see here are other areas that should be there that are not, like education. There's a group that does that. Like we have Golden Hills, we have things like that when you look at a lot of this could be taken out. When I look at what we're actually economy and employment, law enforcement, housing has its own, communications is another one. Those are the ones that I would focus on, right? So, and I know I've attended one of these and it scope creeps really fast, and I think it's no fault of anybody's, but when you're dealing, like Siksika has its own, their council deals with a lot of this stuff hands-on. It's a different perspective that we don't take that seat. Does that make sense?
yeah, absolutely. And
that conversation has to be had, they may have the ability to have that conversation where really it's not even our place to do that.
Yeah, no, and I brought my meeting notes from, I think I attended in May and one in September. They're very clear about what municipal or Siksika Nation jurisdiction is. So for example, under education, they're not looking at actually providing education, but there have been incidents where it's been determined that advocacy to the school boards is helpful. And that could apply to schools within the town of Strathmore, but we also have schools within Wheatland County where Siksika Nation students attend, and there could be some challenges or issues or incidents that arise where it impacts communities or that type of thing, where some advocacy to the school boards could be helpful. Those same comments would apply to health. Obviously, as municipalities, we have no health jurisdiction or responsibility for providing services. That's clearly a provincial mandate. But there, again, were instances where issues had arose where advocacy was important. And there have been some sort of opportunities or joint projects where Siksika Nation has provided health services to Wheatland County, or opened up health services to Wheatland County residents, specifically through COVID-19 and the pandemic. So just even sharing information about stuff like that or feedback, things like that. I am very careful about where our jurisdiction ends and what our responsibilities are. So those are excellent points and definitely something we have to be aware of.
You know, hearing the advocacy mentioned a few times, maybe some of this there should be the work plan, should it say some of this stuff should just be under advocacy. And then all that can be grouped into there, and those issues don't have to have a separate committee and things like that.
Yeah, potentially. I can bring that forward.
Streamline it. So yeah, that's all I'm saying.
Keeping in mind, so the MOU was drafted in 2019 prior to us being sort of invited to participate. And again, remember we were asked if we wanted to sign this MOU or if we wanted to draft another one, and we thought it might be prudent to look at drafting one ourselves. Perhaps that does turn into a tripartite where it's the town, the county, and Siksika if we all come to some conclusion. Like maybe with that, maybe something like this does work for us, and just lay that foundation for what we might do going forward. So I'll certainly take that forward to this group and bring it back to council. Yeah, Councillor Kester.
I have a concern. I don't have a concern meeting with our neighbors. I have a concern we're not meeting with all our neighbors. That concerns me. I know we've been invited in after, but there's no consideration here for the three villages. A long time ago, we would have regional meetings quarterly and include all the councils. Becca has chose not to come to them meetings for whatever, maybe through this process we can get them involved in the regional meetings, and that would be our meeting. We would treat them the same as everyone else in our county. That's the concern I have, and especially at 12 meetings a year, and we don't meet with the villages but quarterly, and they are open council type meetings. This is shouldn't say just different format, and I really don't agree with it. I can see short term, but the goal of us should be incorporated into our partnership meetings, and it's through this partnership that we can really get something done, because most of my area, my villages are the centers where this action is going to take place, right? If they want housing, is big on the reserve. If they want employment out in the farms, they know how to cope with that. They've been doing it for years. It's all the extra stuff, the education that we've been. We have 3 villages that go to the same school as Siksika does. Why were we talking education and not including the villages? So I can support it only insofar as it's a building block to get them to come to the regional partnership. For me, that is the important thing. And half a year from now, if there's been no movement on it, I would consider rescinding it and say, hey, come on, play with everybody.
Yeah, and I guess a counter perspective to that is there's multiple touch points that we have through different boards and commissions and committees that we sit on. For example, WFCSS, we sit on only with the villages and not with the town of Strathmore because we have a partnership there. And so that would be one touch point that we have with the villages to discuss potentially some of the same issues we might discuss at this meeting, but that's an established partnership. I don't think it's appropriate when we've been invited to join these joint meetings that the town of Strathmore and Siksika have been committed to doing for several years already, for us to insert ourselves when we've just newly been invited and suggest that they change sort of where or when they're meeting or the frequency or their focus. This is really work that they have identified as a priority. I had several ratepayers write letters and make phone calls asking why we're not involved in these conversations when we are like the neighbor to Siksika Nation. And several of the issues do arise in our communities as well. I would invite the villages if they are, want to weigh in on some of these villages. They could contact the town. Perhaps they would be invited as well if there are, you know, issues that Siksika Nation residents are experiencing in their communities or that type of thing. I'm trying to think of other boards that we sit on, like that do not necessarily include the whole region, because Siksika Nation is clearly a close neighbor. We share a large boundary with Siksika Nation. There are some distinct differences in terms of they are not a municipality. Some of their governance is different than ours. So it wouldn't necessarily make sense for them to sit on some of the boards or committees that we have just because of how either their operations work or their funding agreements or things like that. Same with WFCSS. It was determined historically it made sense to partner just with the villages and not with the town of Strathmore. So that's done distinctly in that group. But I think it is excellent to keep top of mind to make sure that we are regionally involved as well. And Siksika Nation was invited to Wheatland Regional Partnership. They were not able to attend the last meeting. They haven't necessarily said that they're not attending. It could have just been a capacity issue. I know how busy that they've been. Go ahead.
First, I'll start with FCSS. It was an FCSS's determination not to include Strathmore. It was Strathmore's determination to go there. We were regional in that. FCSS is a funding model too, so I don't know what the capacity is of the reserve to be included in FCSS. Having said that, Strathmore and Siksika were meeting, and they must have talked about Wheatland County not being here, and we were invited. So we're invited, we're there. I don't see the problem. Wheatland County saying we have 3 other villages that aren't inviting. Why aren't they? That should be up to their option to be included. If the villages want to come, it's their decision. I don't want to be seen out in the county that we are focusing our concern by 12 meetings, one partner, and we have other external partners. We have Foothills, Newell, P-Hill, Bolton. We don't meet with them at all. Say hi to them, get to know them at the RMA, but that's about it. And then we have our 3 villages that we are trying to help them sustain, right? And we're only meeting with them quarterly in a different format. I don't want to be seen as 12 meetings a year. I can't support 12 meetings. In the interim, maybe, but this is not a long-term fix. 12 meetings with one partner. I just can't support that.
Yeah, and fair comments. The only other differentiation just that does make Siksika Nation so unique is that with municipal neighbors, we never have instances where other municipalities' ratepayers live in our municipality. So if somebody moves from Newell County to Wheatland County, they become our ratepayer. Whereas we do have ratepayers who are also Siksika Nation members. I believe about half, around 4,000 Siksika Nation members live off nation, And so that's where sometimes we do have more interface issues that are unique because they are ratepayers, so we can still engage in that sense. But there is also some of that just cultural consideration that they're also Siksika Nation members. Councillor Larson.
So would it be reasonable then to go ahead with this and then but put a qualifier on it, so to speak, that say, you know, at the end of 6 months, if we don't see value, if there's no value add to the county as a whole, then we would discontinue with it, because I think that gives us an opportunity to give it a fair shot and see what it's all about, but also gives us the ability to say, well, you know what, this really isn't in the best interest of the county, or maybe it is, who knows?
And the recommendation is just for 1 year, so it would just go until October 18th, 2022. I would ask council to consider the year, particularly just with the unpredictability of times right now. At times, COVID numbers have increased on Nation, which does affect their capacity to engage in some of these initiatives.
And I wasn't saying that we go out in 6 months. It's just that if we could just pick a time halfway through that says this is the value that it's brought or this is the value it hasn't brought, it'll make it much easier to determine what we do the next time around, right? So we could have a midterm update and then one towards the end before we make the decision of whether we do this beyond 2022.
I would ask for the 1 year commitment with the guarantee that my monthly reports will, anytime there is a meeting, you'll have a report following every meeting with what was discussed and where we're at. Councillor Bigger.
Also with the partnering municipalities, we have IDPs and we don't have anything with Siksika, and we've come a long way with the Siksika Nation from my understanding, and that this MOU would be nice to obtain some agreement.
Absolutely. Shanna, do we have a motion on the floor? No. Okay. Council's wishes.
Sorry, I'll move that council approve Reeve to attend up to 12 joint meetings between Siksika Nation, Town of Strathmore, and Wheatland County until October 18th, 2022.
Could I offer just one friendly amendment if Deputy Reeve Clausen could be named as an alternate just in the event that I'm not available? Would you accept that as a... questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. I noticed that our 11 o'clock appointment is here. Would you be okay if we went to that?
What we should do is council should take a 5-minute break.
Oh, good idea.
Do the 11 o'clock appointment at 11.
We'll recess until 11.
Mute off.
Because it was Zoom.
Yeah, I know.
She figured that I didn't need to.
You have been muted. To unmute yourself, press the star key twice. Mute off.
Oil and gas guys are dinosaurs. They're dead. Yeah, they just don't know it yet.
Are you in quite a few committees?
We're going to heat everything with solar panels and windmills.
You know, I think that I feel like that idea. If you want to sign up for
It'll be manageable. The drug task force? Yep. Drug task force.
Infinite possibilities. I don't know what that is.
We'll call the meeting back to order. We do have an 11 a.m. appointment. Marcus Lehman is here to present a hydrogen overview. Good morning and welcome. If you want to just introduce yourself.
Good morning. Good morning, Honourable Reeve and councillors, honourable councillors. Marcus Lehman. I am a county resident, so very, very pleased to be here. And today I want to show you what I think is an enormous potential for the county regarding what is being termed in the international concerns as the hydrogen economy. So is it okay if I proceed?
Absolutely. Yep. Yes, please.
Great. So the hydrogen economy. What is the hydrogen economy? It's basically a transition from the carbon economy. And the hydrogen economy relies on the hydrogen molecule as the commercial fuel to deliver not a fraction, but actually the overwhelming majority of a nation's energy and services. At present, hydrogen is limited to specific segments, specific production segments, and it is produced via steam methane reform, or gray hydrogen. And whoever's an engineer here will know all of these things much better than myself, but it is based off a feedstock of natural gas, and it is produced predominantly here in Canada. Over 90% of hydrogen production in Canada is produced in Alberta. So we have a great, almost a monopoly on hydrogen production in Alberta. But it is termed a gray hydrogen production. Clean hydrogen production, thereby, is made from water, utilizing domestic and electrolysis and utilizing domestic renewable energy, wind and solar. Now, once produced, hydrogen is an incredibly potent energy source. It is a fuel that has basically no kin. It is 10 times more powerful than gasoline, and it can be employed across all economic segments and all productive sectors. And it is, at present, it has been what we call there's been sort of attempts to engage with the hydrogen economy over the period of history, but never has it been so prevalent as today, as we're having this carbon discussion and the reduction of emissions and the implementation of renewable energy, very low-cost renewable energy that is able to provide that electrolysis energy. So when it is combusted, hydrogen only releases water vapor into the atmosphere. So looking at it now, so the gray hydrogen is made using steam methane reform, and it produces carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and as natural gas is a methane emitter, there is also methane emissions involved. Blue hydrogen brings on a additional infrastructure, which is a carbon capture. So on top of the steam methane reform, you put on scrubbers and carbon capture, and you capture that carbon emission and you store it either for commercial purposes, but at this moment there's not a great amount of commercial purposes for that carbon, so it is then stored in underground facilities. Now, green hydrogen, of course, is made by electrolysis, and the energy source is renewable, and water is the feedstock, with zero carbon emissions. The IEA is predicting that clean hydrogen will replace all of the gray hydrogen by 2030, or the majority of gray hydrogen by 2030, as the price points drop. So, as a strategical advisor, Navigatio envisions the world and engages very much in the new energy segment. And Wheatland County has definite attributes and advantages in the hydrogen economy transition. It is a centralized geolocation which has access to wonderful natural resources, open spaces which are very important for the transition, as there will be industrial applications necessary. Also, Wheatland is connected directly to corporate headquarters, corporate energy headquarters, as they also embrace this transition. It will be important to have this access to the administration and the executive decision-making powers that as this transition occurs. Now, one overwhelming advantage that Wheatland County has is its infrastructure capacity. We here in the county, we're blessed with access, transportation access, highways, all across the board. We can have quick access to the United States. Across, we have corridors to the heartland, to the engineering and production facilities up in the north. But also we have rail, and we are tied into the pipeline infrastructure, natural gas pipeline infrastructure that extends not only into the Wheatland County, but extends across the borders into our neighbors. And I believe with a focused municipal plan and vision, Wheatland can become a fundamental leader in the energy transition and position itself as a clean energy hub as this transition moves forward. So I'm going to give a brief overview of the Clean H2 ecosystem. Now, it's very brief because it embraces all segments, all productive segments of the economy. But as we see here, the supply chain is energy generation from renewable energy, wind and solar. It is then channeled into an electrolysis plant, combined with, or the electrolysis of water, converted and then compressed into what is the hydrogen molecule. It can be stored over longer durations of years, even decades if necessary. There is one project occurring it is a California incentivized project, is happening in Utah, and it is a 200 megawatt project which is going to be storing the hydrogen in salt caverns as it is produced from wind generation. Now, that hydrogen can also be piped. At present, it can be piped in a 15 to 25% mixture in the natural gas infrastructure. But as we move along, the pipelines will then be converted or refitted together with pumps and all the hardware to become purely hydrogen pipelines. It can be shipped, it can be railed, it can be trucked across all the segments. In transportation, it is only one of the segments where hydrogen has a strong prevalence. So in municipal public transport, in large cargo, in rail, in Australia, in Austria, and even in Canada, CP has announced that they will be converting their diesel engines into hydrogen engines, using the hydrogen fuel. And there will be needing fueling stations across the nation. In maritime transportation, either liquid hydrogen or ammonia will be used to replace the bunkering fuel, which is one of the most, dirtiest emitters in the world. So that will be replaced with ammonia or liquid hydrogen. And in aviation, it will also be a combination of fuel cells and ammonia production or consumption. In iron and steel, hydrogen is already making a huge impact. So the coke, which is normally used for steel production, is now being placed by the hydrogen molecule heat generation. And the first plant was announced 6 months ago in Sweden, and they are already producing carbon-free steel based on hydrogen production. In the chemical industries, hydrogen will be replacing all the chemical processes that the carbon molecule has been sitting on for over a couple of centuries, basically. And general manufacturing and heating and electricity, of course, becomes apparent as well. So through the supply chain and applications, of course, we have fuel cells for engine, for transport. We can, in heavy industrial and mining, already a number of mining entities are transferring their mining trucks into hydrogen-powered trucks. In aviation, it comes apparent for synfuel, and in the process, of course, of iron reduction. Of course, for us, one thing that is very apparent for us is ammonia production, and hydrogen becomes that feedstock. One of the items that has not been really touched upon so much is that the turbines that have been produced have been manufactured over the last 15 to 20 years for power production, and using natural gas as their feedstock can be easily converted into having the feedstock base being hydrogen. I spoke with the CEO of Mitsubishi Power, and the last sales of the last 2 turbines that Capital Power will be implementing here in Alberta. These are immediately can involve 30% inclusion of hydrogen into their fuel stock, but can be easily transferred into 100% hydrogen consumption for power production. So Alberta released, I was at the annual Alberta Independent Power Producers annual conference, and Minister Dale McNally came with the opening keynote. He referred several times to the Alberta Hydrogen Roadmap. The Alberta government is very aware of this transition as it occurs, and they have partnered or are working with a pan-Canadian think tank called the Transition Accelerator. The Transition Accelerator envisions this transition, this energy transition, the hydrogen economy, and have thus implemented the Edmonton Region Hydrogen Hub. Now that includes the overall region, the Sturgeon County, the Heartland, and they are focused on producing as much hydrogen as possible via the natural gas feedstock. So that would be the gray to begin with, converting to blue once the CCS infrastructure is in place. And additional hubs are coming online. There is a Medicine Hat hub with Methanex and other proponents pushing that agenda, and another additional hub has been proposed, one that embraces the Calgary region. At the conference, I spoke with the Calgary Economic Development Officer, and he is very enthusiastic as per the input which is occurring from their council towards implementing this hydrogen hub and also aggregating with overall regions. Wheatland County has a unique opportunity to establish itself not only as a proponent of this transition in the blue hydrogen, but definitely also to make itself distinctly a strategic distinction in that it can embrace the clean energy transition. In the fact that globally, the IEA has pronounced that over 80% of the production by 2030 will be green hydrogen, and that will be necessary because the off-takers of this feedstock will become a demand that the feedstock is of carbon neutral origin. This is happening across the border, as we see. We have jurisdictions around the world which are embracing this fully. Saudi Arabia, as I mentioned, has announced here, this was in July, that they would become the world's largest green hydrogen producer. This is happening in Australia, in India, in China. I'm engaged with activities in Chile and Brazil, and the United States has just pronounced a green hydrogen roadmap, which will embrace this transition as well. So if Alberta stays only with blue hydrogen, we will be phased out of the world's consumption. So it will be important and pertinent for us to also not only follow this transition, but lead it as it moves forward. At COP26, the Fortescue founder, Andrew Forrest, blasted the oil and gas segment, saying that the methane molecule is more destructive for the environment, and that is the greatest emissions is through the natural gas usage. And at COP26, more than 100 countries committed to reduction in methane emissions, and that also includes Canada. So natural gas is the next oil, is the target of the next oil. Whether we like it or not, that is what is happening as the transition moves along. So Alberta's new energy basin has shifted southward. Alberta has the best solar and wind resources in Canada, and those solar resources are focused in the south and the southeast regions, especially for wind, the southeast regions. In the south region, it is the solar capacities, and we see that happening here. I was involved in Canada's largest renewable energy projects in Vulcan, and we have in queue over 8 gigawatt of projects that want to be built and can be built, and there are investors out there to build these projects. However, there is no transmission capacity and there's no demand for this electricity. However, if we build out an infrastructure that provides the electrolysis that consumes the demand of this energy and creates a hydrogen molecule which can then be shipped across the borders and shipped across geographies, that production or that investment can be unlocked. So again, we have the corridors. Wheatland is strategically placed in all of these corridors. We have the natural gas pipeline infrastructure where Wheatland sits at the nexus of this infrastructure and can implement both OEM operations and maintenance capacity within it. And then we would have access to, of course, the international markets, especially our neighbor, which consumes over 95% of our natural gas and any other gaseous production that we have. So we would have access to that immediately. Wheatland sits in the electricity production, we sit very strategically. We sit right in the nexus of 2 high power transmission lines, both to the east and to the west of us. So all that hardware and all that operations and maintenance which will be occurring as the deployment of renewable energies expands will need a centralized location to which it can access all of these capacities. So I see Wheatland I believe there's an incredible opportunity for Wheatland to embrace this energy transition, and not only embrace it, but to lead it, in the sense that as all regional stakeholders embrace it in the factor of we are transitioning to hydrogen, Wheatland can take this and move the goalposts even further forward by saying we will embrace the hydrogen transition, but we will coincide this with the global capacity or the global demand of green hydrogen and engage with the global stakeholders and investors to attract this investment to the jurisdiction here, while we are also engaging in the middle term transition. So the blue hydrogen is a middle term transition to a longer term 30 to 50 year transition as it blends out. And Wheatland is very strategically placed for that because of the items mentioned above, and it would be a focal point for this investment attraction. And it would create a wide variety of valuable employment positions, and I believe also diversify the economy here in the county. To do this, have to have a plan, basically, and the plan can be discussed at length, but in many ways it involves 3 basic steps. It is provide extensive analysis, going through all the supply chain and projecting what is occurring at present and having an idea of what the supply and demand aspects are in the future. The inherent and potential resources which are here in the jurisdiction. There is a industrial capacity in the speargrass, or not the speargrass, Goldfinch area that could be implemented could be used for implementation of an electrolysis plant with certain resources also local there. And as we are strategically placed for OEM and research and development, we can engage with industrial, logistical, technological, and even academic partners to expand that knowledge and expand that execution with both regional, local, and international players. So then there would be a launch, and that launch could coincide with certain hydrogen industry conferences and would attract a lot of attention, because these are the key words which are in the international investment arena at the moment, and it will become even more pertinent as time goes by and the carbon pricing becomes a factor, and we would be able to take full advantage of it as that moves forward. So I look forward to any questions and hope that this has been somewhat informative, but glad to engage further with anybody who has any items or concerns.
Councillor Baker?
And I know nothing about this stuff, so excuse me if my question isn't very intelligent, but how much water, like if this is made from water, how much water do you need? And does it have to be clean water? What happens to the water after? The water part of it is my worry.
Certainly, no, absolutely. The technical answer is at this moment, approximately 18 liters per kilogram of hydrogen produced.
And that doesn't mean a whole lot.
That doesn't mean a lot. So it's an ecosystem. You consume the water in electrolysis, but in the burning of the hydrogen, you release the water back to the atmosphere. But anyways, to produce the hydrogen, it is not the major factor, and the major cost is not the water. It is the electricity that is needed for it. So there was at the conference yesterday, there was an official in the gaseous, coal, and infrastructure, representative from the IEA, and he was asked basically the same question. He was asked exactly, so it's not a dumb question by any means. It's a very pertinent one. But the water is not the major factor, and it can be any type of water. It can be actually salt water, and that goes through a process of desalination and then can be used for electrolysis.
So it doesn't have to be treated?
It has to go through filtration.
Filtration,
yes.
Okay. And so water is kind of important for our county because we don't actually have a lot of access to water because the Bow River is limited.
Yeah.
And I don't know how. So when you say the increments or measurement that you gave me, I don't know how much that is.
Sure. And just to be clear, I don't. Or it is not imaginable that all of hydrogen production in Alberta would be based in Wheatland County.
No.
It would be based very geolocational with the generation of electricity, so that you don't have to have a charge, a transmission and distribution charge on that electricity. But Wheatland could become the central location for all of this operations and maintenance infrastructure that is necessary to deploy these facilities around the province.
Has there been any work done on wind and solar, converting it to hydrogen and storing it? There's a big problem with wind and solar. It's probably working pretty good today. They probably got it slowed down. But we can go a week with the blades not turning.
Yes.
So those days we got the natural gas. We have a Cavalier plant just a spit throw away from here that uses natural gas all the time. Main power supply. There been any work, and it sounds stupid, but to take electricity, turn it into hydrogen, to turn it back into electricity, just because it's green. And that plant could run on hydrogen instead of natural gas. We could green electricity for how many of our it employs. I just wonder if there's been any economic work on that.
Yes, absolutely, Councillor. That is basically in the power segment. That is the end game, is that it replaces natural gas completely. So the overabundant supply of renewable energy generation, that supplies the electrolysis plants to produce hydrogen, which then become our de facto storage, energy storage, and replace or it balances the intermittency of the renewables.
So presently we have a wind farm already operating. Would it produce enough power to run that Cavalier station?
I don't have the technical, but if that was converted to hydrogen completely, I believe it's a 110 megawatt wind farm. I don't have the. I wouldn't be able. But it certainly would produce a tremendous amount of hydrogen that could be then used in gas turbines.
Thanks.
A question. So I've been doing a little reading, and so I understand. So given that Alberta is investing so much in blue hydrogen, and I know it's not as clean, and there's problems that way, but would they be interested in investing in green because they want to use the natural gas we have, and all of those reasons might make them reluctant? I don't.
Again, this is a perspective. This is my perspective, so it's to be taken with a grain of salt. I believe that the Alberta government is looking to protect its constituents and promote the as much as possible the effective usage of the carbon molecule as we move forward, but with as much carbon reduction as possible. I don't see this as replacing the carbon molecule. I see this as an aggregate. And now I can have my perspective, and there's definitely other visions of the world or other world visions, but we are in an age where everything that's brought into the energy mix will have a very pertinent place and will have value.
And is this, I understand it's like 2 to 3 times more expensive to create?
At the moment, yes.
Yeah.
Even more so at the moment, yeah. That price reduction is aimed to come down in accordance with what happened with solar. So solar has come down over 90% over the last 12 years, 90% in a levelized energy cost. That same trajectory is forecast for hydrogen as well.
What's your funding model?
This is based on private investment. I could perhaps see there's incentives occurring across the board, across pan-Canadian aspects, even the TIER program here in Alberta for carbon emissions, and there could be municipal sort of incentives to sort of attract investment into the jurisdiction. But essentially, all of this is private sector investment.
So you're not looking for government grants?
I'm not looking for anything at the moment. I'm just here to approach the council and present what the opportunity of the hydrogen economy is.
Deputy Reid Clausen.
Thanks, Marcus. This brings me way back because, just as a side note, in junior high, I did this as a science fair project, or was starting working on it. Actually, I had a lawnmower engine that was converting to hydrogen, and you started doing the math on the hydrogen of making it, because you make it small scale, and the electricity versus what you recover. There was no way it would work. It's always been the bane of the existence of it. So I like your idea of using solar to do that because it provides a green aspect. My suggestion would be to you, we do have a great solar advantage in Wheatland County that we're aware of, but we also have a problem with getting rid of some water sources, i.e. wastewater, within Speargrass area. So if you could get someone to invest in a pilot program, utilize some of our wastewater, utilize some of the solar generation that's going to be going on there in the future, that might be a great place to start. Because if you can knock off several birds with one stone, it starts looking better all the time. I'm not opposed to this idea at all, because I did the studies way back when, and I understand the whole process, and it's very cyclical how it works. But it's just the money involved is crazy. But if it's all scalable. If it can get scaled down, but you got to start somewhere. So that would be my suggestion to you.
Yeah, no, I take your point is very well taken, and yeah.
So, what do we need to do to become the clean hydrogen hub? Like, how do we do this? Like, I can go tell my one friend. Acquaintance, let's go that way. Let's go. But like, so how do we transition where we're at right now to doing?
There's, like was mentioned, there's a transition accelerator that has already reached out to the county, and in plans to include the county in a regional hub based in Calgary. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's perfect, because you're engaging with all the players that are in the market. The only comment that I would have to that is that you don't distinguish yourself. You don't become different than anybody else. And there is a lot of competition out there, and competition, as we all know, if you don't make yourself special, if you're not differentiated in some way, some means, either in cost or in value of some manner, then you become a commodity. And the idea would be to elaborate a strategic plan where Wheatland could become a distinct clean energy hub, which attracts not only the transition in itself, but it moves the goalpost ahead and sees the long-term vision of this implementation. So a plan, basically.
You have that plan.
It would be the commission or the council that would have to look at that, but I could work with council and administration to elaborate that plan, yes.
Other questions for Marcus?
Well, thank you very much then.
Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate the information. Marcus, would you mind if you were to provide the presentation to our administration so they could circulate to council?
Certainly.
Just so that if they want to refer back, it was a lot of information, especially if you're seeing it for the first time. And there may be further review that would be appreciated,
Sure.
if you don't mind.
Definitely.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. I do want to discuss something with council pertinent to this, but it would be under FOIP, business interest to a third party. Would it be acceptable to go into closed session to discuss that now?
Sure. Council has the opportunity to go into closed session at any time at your discretion.
Let me just grab the FOIP.
Disclosure harmful to business interest of a third party would be section 16.
Thank you. I was going the wrong way in my binder. Thank you, Brian. I'll move us into closed session.
Can we?
A motion to accept.
The
yes,
presentation as
that would be
information?
great.
I'll make that motion.
Councillor Eichert has moved to accept the hydrogen presentation as information, the hydrogen overview. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. I'll move us into closed section under FOIP section 16. All in favor?